channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB plus radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening and welcome to a special Christmas Eve edition of Neil Oliver Live. I'm Emily Carver and I'm in the GB News studio in London, but more than 400 miles away in Stirling is the great man himself, Neil Oliver. Neil will be with me. There he is. Hi, Neil. Neil will be with me until 8 o'clock, and what would be Christmas Eve without a special Christmas message from the legend himself coming up in just one moment. But later in the show, I'll be joined by a famous politician who'll talk to us about what the meaning of Christmas is to him or her. We'll find out. I'll speak to a remarkable man from the northeast of England who's been trying to spread some festive cheer in Ukraine. And I'll be asking the question, whatever happened to the classic Christmas TV shows of the past? And for the next 2 hours, we'll keep you up to date with Santa's progress. There he is, as he makes his way around the world. All of that and more coming up between now and 8 p.m. You will not want to miss it. But before we hear from Neil, let's get an update on the latest news headlines from Tatiana Sanchez.
Emily, thank you. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. Protesters have clashed with police again today in Paris as a vigil was being held at a Kurdish cultural centre where a gunman killed 3 people and left several injured. Police used tear gas to try to disperse the crowd. It's after riots broke out yesterday in the wake of the attack. Members of the community have gathered this morning close to where the incident happened. A 69-year-old man who was already known to police is in custody in relation to the shooting. Paris-based columnist for The Telegraph, Anne-Elisabeth Moutet, told GB News the perpetrator doesn't fit the terrorist portrait.
He's 69 years old. He's a former metro driver. He lived in a flat alone in the center of Paris. His own 90-year-old father says that he's crazy. He collected guns and managed to get some in France where the gun laws are very strict. And he came out of 1 year time in jail only 2 weeks ago, and that was already for attacking a camp of migrants. So all of this points to a racist murder.
Wiltshire police have confirmed a 4-year-old boy has died following a serious medical incident at Longleat Centre Parks. Emergency services were called to the resort at 11 a.m. this morning. The death isn't being treated as suspicious. Holiday makers said the swimming pool there had been closed due to the incident. Rail passengers have been rushing to get the last trains before Christmas Eve services come to a halt. The strike action's expected to cause heavy traffic as well as people travel to see their families for Christmas. Travellers heading abroad are also being warned of delays as Border Force officials walk out for a second day. Disruption at UK airports was brought under control yesterday as the military stepped in to replace workers on strike. Scotland's rail operator is warning strikes will severely limit services, with people being advised to only travel if absolutely necessary. Meanwhile, there's disruption to Christmas deliveries for many as postal workers represented by the Communication Workers Union continue to walk off the job over pay, jobs and conditions. Royal Mail employees began their industrial action on Friday ahead of Christmas.
Members are very angry about the way they're being treated by Royal Mail. People don't take strike action lightly. People don't want to lose pay. They want to actually be at work serving the customer. But the overwhelming massive feedback from the customer is they support their postie, they support their Royal Mail workers. They understand that the strikes is not just about being greedy, it's about actually having a future service and ensuring this great Royal Mail service that's been there for 500 years can continue to thrive and grow in the future.
That was Andy Fairley there from the CWU. Ukrainian authorities say a Russian strike on the southern city of Kherson has killed at least 7 people and wounded almost 60. Kyiv says Moscow carried out the attack for pleasure. President Volodymyr Zelensky published photos showing burning cars on the streets, smashed windows and bodies. Russia denies targeting civilians. GB News is unable to independently verify the reports from Kherson. Now, at least 19 people are thought to have died as a heavy storm sweeps across parts of the US. A number of fatalities have involved road traffic accidents, including a pile-up in Ohio that reportedly killed at least 2 motorists. Several were also injured. Temperatures plunged as low as minus 45 degrees in some areas, with around 250 million people under weather warnings. The storm's forecast to develop into what's being described as a bomb cyclone, bringing with it heavy, blinding snow. And back here, forecasters are predicting a white Christmas for the Highlands with unsettled weather for the rest of the UK. The Met Office has put a yellow warning for snow and ice in place for most of the Highlands, running from tomorrow night until 6 p.m. on Boxing Day. Meanwhile, downpours are forecast in most other places over the Christmas weekend. The Environment Agency has issued 66 alerts for possible flooding in England. And the lead singer of dance group Faithless has died at the age of 65. Maxi Jazz, whose real name was Maxwell Fraser, was a member of the group alongside Rollo and Sister Bliss. A statement on his social media said he died peacefully at his home in South London and changed lives in so many ways. They were best known for songs Insomnia and We Come One. And Father Christmas's journey, delivering presents to children around the world, is well underway. This is the live feed of Santa's movements, tracked by the North American Aerospace Defense Command. NORAD have been tracking his annual trip since 1955, when a child phoned the command asking for Santa's location. NORAD's deputy commander says children in the UK need to be in bed by 9 p.m.
Traditionally, we've seen Santa arriving over the UK around 11:30 at night. That's why we keep repeating to the kids out there, be in bed by 9 and keep the magic of Christmas alive. And you're going to wake up to a great surprise of having present probably under your trees or by the fireplace, depending on your traditions.
TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Neil Oliver Live with Emily.
Last week saw the anniversary of the loss of the Penlee lifeboat with all hands. She was the Solomon Brown, a 47-foot Watson-class vessel paid for, like all RNLI lifeboats, by donations from the public. On the evening of the 19th of December 1981, the Union Star, a brand new 1,400-ton coaster on her maiden voyage and making for Arklow in Ireland, was in trouble around 8 miles off the Wolf's Rock Lighthouse in southwest Cornwall. Her engine had failed and could not be restarted. Aboard were her skipper Henry Morton, his wife, 2 teenage daughters, and a crew of 4, 8 souls in all. Morton's call for help was heard first by the crew of a nearby tug, also struggling through the English Channel that night in the teeth of a dreadful storm. They offered to put a line aboard and take the Union Star in tow, but Morton knew that that would have made the ship salvage. Fatefully, he said thanks but no thanks and radioed the rescue services instead. The situation quickly deteriorated. Dead in the water, they were being driven inexorably towards the rocks of the Cornish coast. A Sea King helicopter was scrambled from the base at Culdrose, and a call was sent out to raise the men of the Penlee lifeboat at Mousel. Coxswain William Trevelyan Richards received the alert. He stepped out of the home he shared with his mother into the teeth of what was by then a full-blown hurricane. It was the last Saturday night before Christmas, and he made his way to the village's Ship Inn, where he knew many would have gathered for the festivities. He asked for quiet, told them the score, and asked for 7 volunteers. A dozen men raised their hands. By the time they got to the boathouse, there were more men waiting, all having received the call-out at their homes. In the end, that night of nights, the Solomon Brown was crewed by Trevelyan Richards, James Stephen Madron, Nigel Brockman, John Blewett, Charlie Greenhaw, Barry Torrey, Kevin Smith and Gary Wallace. The Sea King helicopter, piloted by Lieutenant Commander Russell Smith, a US Navy pilot on exchange with the Royal Navy, was first to reach the Union Star. He lowered his winchman into the hellish soup of rain and hurricane-force winds in hopes of plucking some souls from the rolling deck of the ship below, but the conditions were so bad they had to pull back and only watch what happened next. The Solomon Brown, utterly dwarfed by the coaster, hove into view and immediately sought to come alongside, trying again and again to get into position so as to be able to take her people off. Lieutenant Commander Smith later described how the Solomon Brown was picked up by mountainous waves not once but several times and tossed onto the deck of Union Star like a landed fish before washing back off into the sea once more. Finally, Trevelyan Richards was able to keep her alongside the coaster just long enough. Lieutenant Commander Smith watched as 4 shadows leapt from the deck of Union Star down into the outstretched arms of the lifeboat men waiting so very far below. Having saved 4, Trevelyan Richards steered the Solomon Brown back to try and get the rest. The helicopter crew watched, the operators at Falmouth Coast Guard listened. What came next was everlasting silence. No one knows for sure what happened. It seems likely the lifeboat and the coaster had been pushed so close to land that finally they hit rocks in shallow water. Union Star may have rolled over on top of the lifeboat when she capsized. In any event, all were lost, the 8 from Union Star and the 8 lifeboat men. Only 8 bodies were ever found, 4 from each vessel. It's the last time the RNLI lost an entire crew. May that sad record stand forevermore. William Trevelyan Richards, the coxswain, was buried on Christmas Eve. There were more funerals to come. On the morning after the tragedy, many volunteers stepped forward from the community of Mousel, ready to take the places of the lost men. At the subsequent inquiry, a letter from Lieutenant Commander Smith was read out to the court. Throughout the entire rescue, the Penlee crew never appeared to hesitate. After each time they were washed or blown away from Union Star, the Penlee crew immediately commenced another run-in. Their spirit and dedication were amazing. They were truly the greatest 8 men I have ever seen. Truly they were. Truly they were. Nearly an hour after the last transmission from Solomon Brown, a lookout on the cliffs swore blind he saw her lights making her way home. Dusk is drowned forever until tomorrow, wrote Dylan Thomas. It is all at once night now. The windy town is full of windows, and from the larrupped waves the lights of the lamps in the windows call back the day and the dead that have run away to sea. Ever since, it has been the tradition to switch off the Mousehole Christmas lights at 8 o'clock on the 19th of December as a gesture of remembrance. I think about the Penley lifeboatmen every year at this time. They say greater love hath no man than this, but that he lay down his life for his friends. I say there is a greater love, and that it was revealed in the willingness of those 8 Mousehole men who were ready to lay down their lives for people they had never met and would never know. I often remind myself of the Penley lifeboatmen, in fact, throughout the year, and I think about selfless acts of courage that declare in the strongest possible terms what it truly means to be human and alive. I think about what people are capable of, how much they have to give, and how much some of them will give. The Penley lifeboatmen gave everything they had. At Christmas, we think about the birth of a child, Jesus Christ. He is God's gift to the world. Every child is a gift, precious beyond description. It's also an act of immeasurable bravery by every woman who bears a child, because every child is, she knows, at the mercy of the world, and every mother must understand, without needing to think about it, that her child is ultimately surrendered to life itself. Mary gave birth to Jesus, the Son of God, and even she would not be spared the ultimate loss. All our lives are forfeit, a debt that must be repaid, willingly or unwillingly. Christmas is the time to think about all this, to think about what it means to give, and to acknowledge the meaning of the gift of the child, of every child. The selfless courage of the Penley lifeboatmen and the message of the Christmas story can be the antidote to much of the madness that is all around us now. It's a time to remember what we have, to value our loved ones, and to be thankful they are with us. Rather than our hollow, self-serving leaders, it's the courage and sacrifice of our fellow citizens that should capture and hold our attention, and not just now, but all through the year. It often feels like we're supposed to focus all our attention on those who are not worthy, those whose faces we see every day, the politicians in Parliament, the leaders around the world, their preferred experts, whose names we hear over and over. They have nothing to give that is of any use to us now. That much has been made painfully obvious in recent years. I've long stopped paying attention to any of them. Instead, I look for heroes elsewhere. We're supposed to believe our leaders mean to rescue us from whatever COVID was, from the warmongers, from climate change, from the cost of lockdown crisis. But they had and have no such intentions, as far as I can see. If they have plans to make anything better, it's certainly not our lives or the lives of our children. They will send no cavalry to rescue us. If we are to be saved, and we surely will be, then we must look to one another for the necessary effort. We're more than capable of the task. We must save ourselves and each other by setting aside old, broken ways and finding new. We should turn away from those who have failed us, lied to us, deceived us, and left us to our fates, and see that it is time to take the initiative, to shape and build something new, something untouched by those who have betrayed us and let us down. Just because the help and leadership we need is not yet clearly in view, the seeds of it are there among us already nonetheless. We must come to our own rescue in the year and years ahead, because there's no one else. The Christmas story tells us that 2,000 and more years ago, a baby boy was born into poverty and into obscurity. During the 33 years of the life of the man he became, he was recognised for what he really was, his true value, by relatively few. He died as he had lived, in obscurity. He was executed for standing up to and challenging the establishment. But by his actions, the world was changed forever, for the better. Sometimes the most obvious people change the world. At other times, it's the people the world does not notice, that the world thinks nothing of and so ignores, who end up making all the difference. I hope and also trust that this is one of those times. I have no faith in the obvious, loud people with their hands on the levers of power. We will be saved by our own actions in defiance of those who care for us not a jot and who prioritise only those they serve, which is to say the already rich and already powerful, the banks, the markets and the global corporations. I say we should ignore the whole lot of them. Here's the thing. Together right now we already have everything we will ever need, which is to say each other. We can share food and warmth and light. We are free people. It's Christmas. And the Christmas message is that hope is here, light in the dark. Merry Christmas, you beautiful people.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Neil Oliver, your stirring Christmas message this evening. There was some uplifting moments in that. I think what I took from it was that we need to rely on each other, not just look to our politicians, so-called experts and so on. We have strength among us and with our loved ones. Thank you very much indeed. We'd love to hear what you think about what Neil had to say there. Do you have a little Christmas message for us? Perhaps you do. Tweet us. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet us at gbnews, and we'll try to get to some of your comments a little bit later. Now, Neil will be with us throughout the show, never fear, but keeping me company here in the studio this evening is the Conservative member of the London Assembly, Keith Prince. Keith, what did you take from Neil's monologue there?
Well, I thought is very deep, actually, and I think it was all really about sacrifice, someone putting others before themselves, which really is the spirit of Christmas and what Jesus taught us. You know, Matthew 19:19, honour thy mother and father.
Have you lived that in your life, Keith?
I try. I'm a politician, so, you know, I'm up there with estate agents and bankers, but
not much
I
trust
try. You know, I work with a number of charities, so I do try, yeah.
Yeah, and another thing that Neil was talking about was the bravery of having a child.
Yes. I mean, I've had a couple, so I don't think that makes me brave. I think it makes my partner brave, but not me.
Well, he said, yes, the bravery of a mother for having children. And I do sometimes think that actually I haven't had children yet, but bringing a small being into the world, such a complex world as we live in now, and of course we always have doom and gloom on the news, but fundamentally people are good. I believe that anyway. But it is still a very brave endeavour.
Well, it was the most...
Assuming you've given it thought before you have a child.
Most amazing moment in my life when I saw my son being born, and then I held him. I thought, wow, you know, this is really scary. I've created this whole human being, you know.
What do I do now?
Exactly. Oh, here you go, Mum.
But what's the first Christmas like with a little baby?
Boring, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, my son was born in October, so yeah, boring. They have to be about 8 months, 10 months before they get interesting.
To start doing something. But I do you think that in our country we sometimes do defer too much to, I know you're a politician, but do you think we defer too much to politicians and experts and even corporations, as Neil was talking about, in terms of for guidance? Of course, we look back to the last couple of years throughout the pandemic, we very much did what we were told. Should it be more about personal responsibility?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to live in a nanny state where other people make decisions for me. And as Neil has quite often pointed out, over recent months and years, quite often those experts haven't really got it right. So I think you should rely on yourself and your own self-judgment and have the confidence in your own beliefs and your own moral standards.
And what will you be doing this Christmas?
Well, actually,
obviously you're here spending Christmas Eve with me, which is fabulous. Thank you very much for coming in this evening. But do you have any other plans?
I'm on with Nana tomorrow. Actually, I'm with Nana tomorrow, and then between Christmas.
Nana's nabbed you too.
She has, yes, she has. But between Christmas and New Year, I'm going away for a few days to Wales with a good friend of mine, yeah.
Oh, lovely. I'm getting away in January, actually, hopefully, if the strikes don't curtail my plans. Anyway, after the break, former Conservative MP Anne Widdecombe will talk to us about the meaning of Christmas and why it's so important this year after such a turbulent one. See you in 2 minutes.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to this Christmas Eve edition of Neil Oliver Live with me, Emily Carver, in the studio. Neil also joining us online from Stirling. Now, there's still a few hours to go until Father Christmas visits all the good boys and girls in the UK. But his mammoth journey around the world is already well underway. Those good people at the North America Aerospace Defence Command spend the rest of the year protecting the airspace above the United States and Canada. But tonight, they're doing something much more useful. Yes, their Santa tracker, there it is. There's our Santa tracker. It looks like Santa and his reindeer are above a rather massive water mass there. I don't know which ocean, which sea that is, but it looks like he's heading...
Indian, I think.
The Indian Ocean, perhaps.
Yeah, it's just gone past
Keith has
Iran.
just told me it's the Indian Ocean. Yes, that's our Santa tracker following Father Christmas there. So, yeah, look at him go. Now, I don't know if you can remember at home what the names of the reindeer are, but my producer has very carefully given me their names here. Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Dunder and Blixen. And, of course, there's Rudolph as well, but he was a reject, if I remember rightly, was he not, Keith?
He was, indeed.
For his red nose?
Yes, he apparently wasn't very bright.
It wasn't bright enough, but look, there's Santa crossing the Indian Ocean to get to... Where will he get to next?
Well, he's in between Iraq and Afghanistan at the moment, as far as I can see.
Those who are listening on radio, we're essentially looking at a live footage on the screen of the Santa moving across the Indian Ocean. We'll be coming back to that later to see where he is next, but I think we can all agree it's been a rather difficult year for most of us, at least, from the war in Ukraine to the cost of living crisis. In this country, there's been no shortage of bad news. Christmas is, of course, a special time of year, but just last month it was revealed that less than half of people in England and Wales now identify themselves as Christian. So, joining us now is someone definitely who identifies herself as a Christian, the former Conservative MP Anne Widdecombe. Anne, thank you so much for joining us this evening on Christmas Eve. How are you spending this evening after you've spoken to me, of course?
A couple of hours' time I shall go off to midnight mass and then I shall come back. I'm going to Buckfast Abbey on this occasion. And their doors open at 11 o'clock and everybody tries to get there because it gets packed. And then there is the midnight mass. Then I shall come home. I shall probably have a glass of mulled wine to warm up because the Abbey's quite cold. And then I shall go to bed and hope that Father Christmas comes overnight.
Well, I hope he does. I mean, he's travelling over the Indian Ocean at the moment, so I'm not sure at what time he will reach you, but I'm sure he will be there with lots of presents. Now, we got you on to talk about the state of the world this Christmas.
Really?
What can you tell us? Big question.
I didn't think I was going to talk about the state of the world. I thought I was going to talk about the importance of Christmas. I mean, obviously, the state of the world is not happy. We've got war in Europe. We've got an awful lot of economies in serious trouble following COVID. And also, of course, because of the war in Ukraine. In Afghanistan, we've got the Taliban now quite overtly persecuting women. I don't think there's any word for it. So everywhere you look, it's a bit difficult, but then it always is. And, you know, I hear you say, why is it important to celebrate Christmas this year? It's important every year because the real meaning of Christmas is the dawn of redemption. It's that mankind can, well, mankind doesn't redeem himself, but that Christ redeems mankind, and we all get rather better. Now, let me say this. There was one thing about Neil Oliver's address that really disturbed me. He appears to be saying, peace and goodwill to all men, all except politicians. Believe me, I worked with politicians at the height of power for 23 years. I was actually in Westminster for 23 years. And I saw the amount of self-sacrifice and the real enthusiasm that those MPs had for helping their constituents, for trying to sort out the country. They will get it wrong from time to time. They will get it wrong. They will make big blunders. And occasionally they will do bad things. That should not put them beyond the bounds of our charity, Mr. Oliver.
And
that should not.
Well, let's put that to Neil right now.
I would absolutely argue that there has been something profoundly different in recent months and years. There's an ideological problem. I dare say the constituency MPs are working in the way that they always have in representing their constituents, but the front row, the front rank of politicians has consistently let us down. There has been an ideological failure. They are definitely not looking out for the people, I would contend. They are representing corporations. They are representing other powers that be. And I don't think there's any denying that for the last couple of years, the people have been desperately let down by the people that are there, that are recognisable, that are behind podiums all the time. The things that are being promised are not happening. We are being let down.
I don't believe that we are being deliberately let down. As I say, politicians will get things wrong. They're only human. After all, they're going to get things wrong. They're going to believe particular advice and then find actually that advice was the wrong thing. But what I do reject...
But they're consistently wrong.
Neil, what I really utterly reject is your contention that they are there in their own self-interest, only looking after their rich friends. Just think back. You talked about the importance of a child. David Cameron lost a child. And while he was Prime Minister. And anything can happen to any politician. They are humans like the rest of us, and at least try to have some respect for what they're trying to do.
What they're trying to do, but there's been a consistent failure. And when people make the kind of mistakes that have been being made at that level, they ought to step aside. There comes a time when you can't just keep making mistake after mistake after mistake and still continue to hold that position. There's been nothing but failure and letdown for the last couple of years. That's my position on this. To move the conversation on, you're exactly right. You're here to talk about Christmas, and you're here to talk about the performance of other leaders as well. How do you rate the performance of faith leaders in the last couple of years? Leader of the Church of England, leader of the Church of Scotland, leader of the Catholic faith. What do you say regarding closure of churches, pushing the vaccines? Do you think that the faith leaders held up their end of the bargain with their congregations?
Well, I said at the time that I thought the churches should have been open during the pandemic, because if there is anywhere where you can socially distance, it's certainly a church, be several pews apart from somebody else. And I thought they should be open because that was precisely when people needed the comfort of the church. So and the Catholic Church did object, but didn't actually go into open rebellion and open the churches, but it did at least object, which some of the other churches didn't. But I always say this, I say, hang on a moment. The growth of Christianity or the shrinkage of Christianity isn't going to be down to the church leaders. It's down to us as Christians. We're the ones with the responsibility for spreading the message. And if the early Christians had just sat back and left it all to the apostles and hadn't done anything themselves, we'd all still be worshipping Zeus, quite honestly. We have a responsibility. Yes, hello.
And does it upset you that fewer and fewer people are attending church?
Well, obviously, it disappoints me, and obviously I feel that they are missing out on something essential. Yes, I feel that, but I also feel that is down to us. It's no good going to work and not saying a word about what you believe. And I'm not talking about pressurising people, I'm just talking about bearing witness. Not saying a word about what you believe, then blaming some archbishop somewhere because he somehow has presided over declining congregations. I mean, come on, folks.
And I think it's worth pointing out that Christianity specifically is growing around the world.
Yes,
that numbers are on the rise, and although it's fair to say that fewer than half of British people identify as Christians, that still makes it by far and away the biggest single religion in the country. And I do wonder if the last couple of years, which have been very stressful, to put it mildly, for so many people, would we expect a rising uptake or a rediscovery of faith in many people when they start to look to the eternal verities?
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. If you cast your mind back to 9/11, one of the things we saw in the immediate aftermath was a lot of people going to church who hadn't been in donkey's years. And who suddenly, because the world looked a very, very fragile place, we were all talking about World War III, in case anybody's forgotten, and because the world suddenly looked a very fragile place, people sought spiritual comfort. That is why I'm so cross that the churches weren't open during COVID, because I think that was a time when people really needed spiritual comfort.
Yes, I think it bears pointing out as well that the number of people identifying as atheist is in decline. I think I looked up figures, there were 147 million in 1970, but it's in decline, and it's expected to continue to decline in the years and decades ahead. And there's 84% of people alive on the planet today that identify with some kind of religious belief. And sometimes I think the death of faith, the death of Christianity included, the reports are exaggerated, to put it mildly.
Yes, I think that's a very valid point, particularly about atheism. Now, I've never understood atheism. I do understand agnosticism. I understand that. But I don't understand atheism because it insists that a negative is proved, and you almost can never prove a negative. You can prove a positive, but you can't prove that something isn't. If I say I'm not surprised it's declining, I am a little surprised because of the rise of secularism. But I think you're right. Sometimes we despair too readily, and we should look at the positive. But we've all got to work on that positive. It's the duty of every Christian to work on that positive.
Thank you very much, Anne, for joining us this evening on Christmas Eve. I hope you have a lovely time at midnight.
You've all been very serious, but Merry Christmas.
Yes, exactly. Merry Christmas. We're going to be popping open some champagne later in the show, so don't you worry. We're going to be talking about all sorts. But thank you very much for telling us about what Christmas means to you, and thanks, Neil, as well. We're going to be moving on. Keith, we'll come back to you very, very shortly. After the break, I will be joined by a real hero, a man who has delivered more than £25,000 of aid to Ukraine. Please stay tuned. Please stay tuned. See you shortly.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate. with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back to this Christmas Eve edition of Neil Oliver Live with me, Emily Carver. A little later in the show, we will be joined by someone who says he'll eat 200 Yorkshire puddings over Christmas. I have absolutely no idea why, but we will find out later in the show. Before that, we're going to speak to a man who featured on this show earlier this year as one of Neil's Great Britons. But he's got such an incredible story that we just had to catch up with him again. Kevin Rodham was so moved by the plight of Ukrainian refugees following Russia's invasion that he has made 4 trips to Eastern Europe to deliver aid. So far, Kevin's taken more than £25,000 worth of food, clothes and other supplies. And he's heading out there again on January the 2nd. I'm delighted to say Kevin joins me now. Kevin. Ah, there you are. Oh, you're looking very festive. Very festive indeed. So you are clearly not out in Ukraine at the moment. Where are you based?
No, I'm in my house in Roocope in Weardale, which is in County Durham.
Now, I was reading an article that was written about you, a report. I think it was in a local paper, or perhaps one of the nationals, and it said that it was your illness that spurred you on to want to do this, to want to make a difference in Ukraine.
Yes, it was. I retired in July 2020, and sadly, towards the end of August 2020, I contracted COVID. I was double jabbed at the time, but it made me very, very ill. I didn't really think I was going to recover from it, I'll be perfectly candid. But recover I did, and maybe I recovered to do something different. And that difference is to take aid to the Ukraine.
Well, what a lovely thing to do. Now, I just read out, of course, in your introduction that you've managed to deliver £25,000 of supplies to Ukrainians. Who's been donating? Who's been giving you those supplies? Who's been giving the money to support what you're doing?
I've got a network of people who are so, so generous. To be honest, I'm humbled with the generosity of people. I've had donations that have come from Switzerland, from Scotland, up in your country there, Neil, and far down into the south of England. It's unbelievable the amount of support that I get. And I do it all through social networking. Facebook is a good thing if used correctly. It's a disaster if used incorrectly, I believe they tell me. But also I do fundraising as well. My wife and I and one or two others, we were at 2 agricultural shows in August and September, and we were raffling a full wheelbarrow full of booze. And 2 lucky people, they won the whole wheelbarrow full of booze, and I generated in excess of £3,000 over the 2 weekends.
Kevin, it's lovely to see you again, looking so well, looking so Christmassy as well. What can you tell us about what Ukraine looks like after the better part of a year of war?
Rubbish, I think.
Yeah, we're starting to see, the last time I was there, the weather was starting to get colder. The resolve of the Ukrainian people is I've never seen anything like it. They are so strong and determined. To give you an idea, I had a message from a friend of mine over there, very good friend, and I said to him, "How are you today?" And he said, "We have no electric, but we are strong." And the resolve is there. I've been virtually to the front line. I've spoken with soldiers there, and they all talk about when the war is over, but more importantly, when the victory comes.
And are you seeing the damage to infrastructure? It's difficult. It's difficult to gauge sometimes away from where we say in Kiev, there's a certain amount of footage comes out of there and a few other places. But I presume you're out in the wider countryside, perhaps, and seeing getting a better sense of what it's really like for the Ukrainians on the ground.
Absolutely. What I see in some of the newly liberated villages is massive destruction. As the Russian invaders leave in retreat, they leave some dreadful things. You can see a photograph there on the screen. That was the site of 4 houses in Dnipro. A missile came in and there was 4 families sadly lost their lives there. That's clearly not a military base. It's not a military target. It was housing. And we're starting to see more and more this is happening.
And Kevin, you must have been out there often enough that I can only imagine you've made friends, that you must be establishing a network of people on the ground that you see, every time you go, and that you've got a real network of people there now.
I do, Neil. I've got some real good friends out there now, right the way from the Lviv region, Kermano, right the way across into Dnipro and to Pavlograd. And of course, I've met quite a number of the defenders who've become friends as well. And the one thing that you don't do is you don't let friends down. And I will never do that.
And Kevin, what's your priority in your next trip? You're heading out again after Christmas in the new year on January the 2nd. Where will you be heading?
Right, I'm heading out. My wife's actually going with me for the first part of the trip. We are taking toys to orphanages in and around the Lviv and Ternopil area. Kindly donated a lot of these from the Humanitarian Help for Ukraine, which is an organisation run by a team of ladies from Consett in County Durham. And there we've got the 2 Catherines, Josie, Justine, Jane, Carol and Anne. They've done an amazing job, not only getting toys for Ukraine, but also for the UK as well. The other priority, of course, is power, and generators is a big need out there. I'm taking 8 generators with me this time. I'm taking power banks, I'm taking inverters, I'm taking batteries, just things that are going to make life that little bit better and a little bit easier for the people that really need it.
Well, I think, Kevin, everyone at home will be saying what a lovely Christmas message from yourself of, helping people. That's what Christmas is all about. You really are doing some amazing work and you should feel very proud, I think, you and your partner at home. I wish you all the best on January the 2nd on your next trip to the Ukraine. I know you're probably making a big difference out there now. Keith, what have you been doing when it comes to Ukraine?
Well, I have to honestly say I haven't done very much about Ukraine, obviously.
Do you have any friends and family who have taken in Ukrainians? Do you know anyone you work with? I do, actually. Yeah, I was speaking to a good friend of mine only a couple of days ago, and he's got a woman and her daughter staying at his place in London, actually. And, they've been there for almost a year now. I've just gone over 300 days. And, it's an adjustment for them. But, he said to his wife the other day, well, it's a very small sacrifice for us. Her husband, the wife's husband, who's living with them, he's still in Ukraine fighting, so it must be a terrible time for them, really. I think the British are particularly good at this, if I'm allowed to be patriotic on this one. It does seem like the charities in this country and the individuals who decide to put aside their own lives and wants, needs, etc., to help go above and beyond, essentially, is a nice message at this time of year.
It is, yeah, and Christmas is all about...
We should all do more, really.
We should. Well, on New Year's Day, I'm actually going to help at the local night shelter, so that's my bit for Christmas.
Oh, that's quite a nice bit there.
Yeah.
Right, well, after the break, the late Queen's former chaplain will tell us why the Christmas story is one of hope. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere. Amazing! You see, amazing! You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel. Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful. Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
It's delivered.
Welcome back. Right, I don't know about you, but I think it's about time we checked up on Father Christmas and how he's getting on as he travels around the world. Coming up on the screen, if you're listening on radio, we are looking at Santa. He is crossing a landmass. Keith, tell me where.
Well, according to my tracker, he's due to arrive in Santa Denis in Reunion in about 2.4 minutes.
Well, there you go. The children of that area will be very happy indeed because presents will be... I don't know what time of day it is over there, presumably in the middle of the night. Because that's the time Santa can arrive without the children waking up, of course. And as I said before, all of the reindeer there. Look at him go. Yeah. What a good job he does.
He does.
He must be proud to sleep at night. That's Santa.
I hope we've got the Santa.
Right, well, moving on from Santa, although he is still there up on our screen, travelling across the world, travelling across the globe to deliver gifts. But back in 1965, I don't know if you remember this film, perhaps you do, a film called The Greatest Story Ever Told was released. It's about the life of Jesus Christ, starting with the Nativity. The story of Jesus is one of hope that inspires Christians all over the world. So to discuss this, I'm joined now by Gavin Ashenden, who is a former chaplain to Queen Elizabeth. I must ask you, Gavin, what was that like?
It was great. It was quite exciting to be in the wonderful buildings, Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, and really a great privilege to be anywhere near the Queen and her family. She was a wonderful human being, and it was it was very inspiring to be a part of what she did.
And Gavin, you'll be leading a service tomorrow in Somerset, I believe, is it?
Well, no, I've become a Roman Catholic layman, so I shall be.
Oh, I am terribly sorry. I've completely confused with something else.
You can be terribly happy. I've so much responsibility lifted off my shoulders.
Gavin, how will you be spending this Christmas?
Oh, I shall be singing my heart out. I shall be in church, full of the most enormous joy, singing and also hugging and greeting people and reevaluating, really, what's happened this year in the world and reevaluating the place that I can play in it, too, for what's to come. I think Christmas ought to be a time of recalibration, so that we throw ourselves back into the struggle, because it's a very serious struggle we're in, both personally and politically.
Yes, I think we all need a bit of recalibration, Neil.
Yeah, Gavin, it's great to see you again. Always good to hear your voice and your message. Like a lot of people, I receive a lot of letters throughout the year and a lot of Christmas cards this year in particular. and so many people declaring how much their faith has meant to them over the last couple of years. And I wonder to what extent you think there is a resurgence of Christianity at the moment, especially, worth discussing at this Christmas time of all times.
I think I'd certainly say, looking back over the past few decades, things have got darker. The partition between good and evil, light and darkness, hope and despair seems to be growing more intense. And the reason that matters is that you have to do something about it. You get caught up in it. I think in a strange paradoxical way, as the church is empty, as some of the church leaders appear to give up on the struggle, it brings an extra focus to the importance of finding a way of renewing faith, renewing humanity, renewing the church. We're in a time of very serious cultural crisis. No one knows quite how it's going to work out. There are some fairly worrying narratives out there, but we're struggling for freedom, for democracy, for the integrity of the individual, and to save a dying culture from collapsing in on itself. And I don't think people realize quite how serious the collapse is going to be and what the consequences are. So yes, it's Christmas, and yes, we celebrate with all the usual cultural accoutrements, but right at the heart of it, it's an invitation, I think, to look 23 fairly in the face and say, we've got to step up to the mark morally, spiritually, philosophically as well.
I'm terribly sorry if viewers and listeners at home just heard some carols. My brilliant guest to my left was just playing some Christmas carols. I think he was tracking Santa on his phone, so I'm terribly sorry to interrupt. Neil, take it away.
No, I'm interested in whether, Gavin, you think that the casual erosion of Christianity in this country, might be in the spotlight somewhat. It's traditional almost every year to say, oh, we mustn't say Merry Christmas. We should say, season's greetings or happy holidays or whatever. And that, piece by piece, there's been an enervating erosion of Christianity for the whole of my lifetime, I would say. And I wonder if the time has come for faith leaders to be a little bit more lion and less of the lamb about all of this.
It's long past the time that they should have stood up. I watched a woman being arrested by the British police today for saying a prayer on the street in Birmingham. The thought that the fact we've moved from thought crime to treating prayer as something you can be criminalized for means that things are very much more serious than they look. This has been developing under our noses for some time. Many of us have been speaking out about it. I think one of the things that seriously disappoints me is that the people who have been charged with the responsibility of guarding our freedoms, guarding our democracy, guarding our faith, guarding the integrity of the individual person, they're asleep on the job or they're scared. But they should wake up, because a whole culture and civilization depends upon this. You cannot have people locked up for saying a prayer on the silently, being suspected of saying a prayer on the streets of Birmingham.
It is amazing footage, that Isabel Vaughan Spruce, I think the name of the lady in question. And when you hear her being asked, is she praying? And she says, well, I might have been in my head, but there are also times when my thoughts drift to what I'm having for my tea tonight. So I couldn't actually say if I was praying in the exact moment when I attracted your attention. And that was enough to see her arrested. And I wonder why it always feels here in where the largest religion is Christianity, that it's Christianity that's always the target, in a way that perhaps other faiths are not ridiculed, run down, and seen as a soft bet for that kind of abuse.
I think there are two reasons. One has to deal always with the practical as well as the metaphysical. I think practically speaking, it's because Christians are trained not to retaliate. You don't have Christians throwing bombs at people. You don't have Christians cutting people's throats or resorting to knives and weapons. It's against our religion. You're not a Christian if you do it. That's the first thing. And I think the other thing is that there's a very profound struggle between good and evil going on. I have been a practicing Christian for 40 years. I'm a skeptical kind of person. I don't believe easily. But growing up reading Solzhenitsyn, I'm convinced that we're in the middle of a very, very serious struggle between good and evil. And if Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, if he is God come to rescue people, if he is the healing of our souls and our hearts, then it's no surprise that all that is evil will come against him and those who stand with him. And that seems to me to be exactly what we're experiencing at the moment. I mean, why is it that when people curse and swear, they only use the word of Jesus surrounded by a few F words? You don't hear them using language from other religions. It's as if Christ really is the most holy, the most beautiful, the most powerful, and therefore gets the most despoiled and blasphemed. So we're in a struggle between good and evil, and Christianity is the one thing, I would say Jesus rather than Christianity, because I believe in personalizing it rather than a system or a religion. But Jesus is the one thing that stands between us and the darkness, and that's why he comes under attack from the dark side.
Thank you very much for joining us this evening on this Christmas Eve edition of Neil Oliver Live. That was very interesting indeed, and some uplifting messages within that. Of course, that was Gavin Ashenden, who is a former chaplain to Queen Elizabeth herself. Keith, do you think that Christianity is under attack? I'm not sure myself.
I think it depends on what angle you come from. I mean, I'm a member of a Pentecostal church and thriving. The one in Lewisham Tabernacle gets 700 to 800 people attend every Sunday.
I'm terribly sorry. I'm going to have to rudely interrupt you because we have to get to the break. That's all we've got time for at the moment, but there's lots to come between now and 8 o'clock. An etiquette expert will tell us how to make sure we don't make a fool of ourselves around the Christmas dinner table. I'll speak to a man who's planning to eat 200 Yorkshire puddings over the festive period. And one of the country's top TV critics will tell us what to look out for over the next few days. When you're not watching GB News, that is. I'll be back in just a few minutes.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. There's just 5 hours to go until Christmas Day, and the best way to spend that time is, of course, watching GB News. I'm Emily Carver and I'm in the studio in London, but Neil Oliver is in Scotland and he's going to be with us all the way up to 8 o'clock. There he is. In a few minutes, I'll speak to a man who is uniquely placed to talk about Christmas as a respected historian and a lay minister. We're also going to have an etiquette expert who will tell us whether you should eat your Christmas dinner before or after the King's speech. I think after, probably. In the 1970s, more than 20 million people watched Morecambe and Wise on Christmas Day. A TV critic will tell us why modern-day television bosses can only dream of that kind of audience. And of course, I'll let you know how Santa's getting on as the 7 reindeer take him on his incredible round-the-world journey. There he is. All of that and more coming up between now and 8 p.m. But first, let's get an update on the latest news from Tatiana Sanchez.
Emily, thank you. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. Protesters have clashed with police again today in Paris as a vigil was being held at a Kurdish cultural centre where a gunman killed 3 people and left several injured. Police used tear gas to try to disperse the crowd. It's after riots broke out yesterday in the wake of the attack. Members of the community have gathered this morning close to where the incident happened. A 69-year-old man who was already known to police is in custody in relation to the shooting. Wiltshire police have confirmed a 4-year-old boy has died following a serious medical incident at Longleat's Centre Parks. Emergency services were called to the resort at 11 a.m. this morning. The death is not being treated as suspicious. Holidaymakers said the swimming pool there had been closed due to the incident. Rail passengers have been rushing to get the last trains before Christmas Eve services have come to a halt. The strike action is expected to cause heavy traffic for millions of people travelling to see their families for Christmas. Travellers heading abroad are also being warned of delays as Border Force officials walk out for a second day. Disruption at UK airports was brought under control yesterday as the military stepped in to replace workers on strike. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have reacted to the apology made by the Sun newspaper on behalf of Jeremy Clarkson, calling it a PR stunt. In the article written by Mr Clarkson, he said he hated Meghan. That article has become the independent press standards organisation's most complained about piece. Yesterday, The Sun said it regrets publishing it and have said it's sincerely sorry. The Sussex's spokeswoman said the newspaper has not contacted Meghan to apologise. At least 19 people are thought to have died as a heavy storm sweeps across parts of the US. A number of fatalities have involved road traffic accidents, including a pile-up in Ohio that reportedly killed at least 2 motorists. Temperatures plunged as low as minus 45 degrees in some areas, with around 250 million people under weather warnings. The storm's forecast to develop into what's being described as a bomb cyclone, bringing with it heavy, blinding snow. And back here, forecasters are predicting a white Christmas for the Highlands with unsettled weather for the rest of the UK. The Met Office has put a yellow warning for snow and ice in place for most of the Highlands, running from tomorrow night until 6 p.m. on Boxing Day. Meanwhile, downpours are forecast in most other places over the Christmas weekend. The Environment Agency has issued 66 alerts for possible flooding in England. TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Neil Oliver Live with Emily.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live with me, Emily Carver. Now, it is Christmas Eve, after all, and I've got Keith here in the studio with me, so I thought I would treat him to a little Christmas Eve toast.
I hope it's Carver.
I've got a bottle of cheap pink...
Not Carver.
Cheap pink Prosecco here for you, Keith. Only the best. And I am a pro at opening this.
Oh, yeah.
My mother at home, who I hope is watching, will know that to be true. So I'm just going to pop this open because it is Christmas Eve after all, and it's already 7 p.m. So I think that's fine. Right, here we go. Here we go. Now I'm going to ask the etiquette expert later how one should open a bottle, but I'm going to give it a go. There we go. Perfectly done.
Not bad.
Perfectly done. Here you go, Keith.
Thank you.
So there we are for you. Or you can have a little bit more than that.
Oh, drop more, thank you.
You can have a little bit more. And a little bit for me. So happy Christmas Eve to you.
Merry Christmas to you.
Eve. Happy Christmas Eve to everyone at home. I hope you're having a lovely evening, watching us, listening to us on radio, of course. Now, we're going to be continuing to talk about Christmas this evening, of course, and Christianity. Christianity is, of course, more than 2,000 years old, but it took more than 300 years for Christians to actually celebrate Christmas. In the UK, the first recorded commemoration of Christmas, or Christ's Mass, was in 1038. I'm delighted to be joined now by a man who can talk about the history of Christmas and its many traditions with great authority. Martin Whittock is a historian and a licensed lay minister who will be leading the Christmas Day service at a church in Somerset tomorrow. Please tell me about the history of Christmas. A brief overview.
Pagan. Christmas is fascinating because it's so important for Christians, this idea that God became a real human being to restore people back to himself and to create a new relationship with them. That's absolutely crucial. But the thing is, the New Testament doesn't say when in the year it happened. We know Easter happened around Passover, but Christmas, we just don't know. And around the sort of the 340s, 350s, as the church became more influential, it was able to effectively choose a date in the middle of winter, 25th December, which was already associated with a lot of pagan celebrations, Saturnalia, for example, in Rome, and a number of other celebrations that took place in other parts of the northern world at this very dark time, and said, well, basically, this is a period of time when people are used to celebrating, if you like, light triumphing over darkness. Well, we want to tell you Jesus is the light of the world, and that's the key time to celebrate it. So Christmas actually gets fixed at a date when actually we don't actually know when Jesus was actually born, but it picks up greatly after that. We know from Alfred the Great's laws in the 9th century that you can't make a slave or a worker work for the 12 days after Christmas. That's our famous 12 days after Christmas. You're quite right that in 1038 we have its first reference to it as Christmas Mass. Before that, it was simply normally called mid-end winter, which kind of does what it says on the tin, which is kind of like the middle of winter. But it clearly has become a very, very important time when Christians can actually choose a time of the year which is associated with celebrations of light over darkness and Christianize it and make it talk about Jesus, the light of the world. Really expands through the Middle Ages. 12 days of Christmas become times of celebration. The Franciscans give us the Nativity play, for example. We see a lot of boisterous behavior happening as well. We see the first appearance of carols, although a carol is a song that accompanies a dance. It's not actually a Christmas song. Some of them are, some of them aren't. It then takes a nosedive at the Reformation when people begin to say in this country, oh, it's far too Catholic, far too Catholic. It gets banned in this country between 1645 and 1660. It revives a bit in the 18th century, but struggles a bit. The 12 days come right down. Factory Act of 1838 says workers can only have 2 holidays, Christmas Day and New Year's Day. Well, that did for the 12 days of celebration, I can tell you. But by the 1840s, people are fighting back. People are really missing it. And so we see Albert bring the Christmas tree, and we see pictures, drawings of him and Victoria. People say, hey, this Christmas tree is really cool. They've seen them before, but what a great way for a family to celebrate. Dickens fights back too, and he brings in a Christmas carol, and people say there's a real morality to Christmas. Are you caring? We start to see the first appearance of Father Christmas from the 1870s, imported from America, interesting enough, but we take away his St. Nick's cap and we put him in a hood like the old Father Christmas appears in 17th century pamphlets, and suddenly he explodes on the scene as well. You've got the Church of England saying, hey, this is a really great way to connect with working class people, and we start to see the first collections of carols. So suddenly, having taken something of a nosedive in the 17th century, struggling in the 18th century, we see an extraordinary return to the popularity of Christmas, which had been so popular in the Middle Ages, but boy, it's back and it's energized.
That was such a brilliant, enthusiastic trip through history. Neil, would you like to come in? That was the speediest I've ever seen anyone run us through the history of Christmas. So, Neil, what would you like to ask?
What a tour de force, Martin. That was most impressive, I have to say. I was thinking in my head all the things I was going to ask about, and I think you managed to touch base on all of them. Something that's always interested me, though, we have that, every kid has taken part in a nativity play at school. It's so embedded as a tradition. But when you actually look at the Gospels, there's precious little detail between Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and even less in John, about what actually happened. How did we develop such a detailed idea about the nativity? The shepherds, the star, the 3 kings. Who brought all of that, all those fragments together into the scene we're so familiar with?
That's a really good question, because what people tend to do is, both Christians and non-Christians, they tend to harmonise the Gospels. They kind of mix them in together and take a bit from here, take from there, and make one running narrative. But Matthew only mentions the wise men, and Jesus would have been about 2 when they arrived, which is why Herod killed all the children up to the age of 2. So they would have visited a toddler, okay? So Matthew mentions only the wise men. Mark has Jesus explode into Galilee as an adult. Luke gives us almost everything we associate with the Christmas story, the angel and Annunciation, the shepherds, the baby being placed in a manger. No mention of a stable. No mention of a stable. It could have been in a undercroft where animals are kept. It could have been in the yard. Okay, could have been in the yard. It could have been even more bleak than we think. No donkeys are mentioned. I'm really sorry to spoil anyone's Christmas, but there's no donkeys mentioned at all. And then when John writes his gospel, a bit later in the first century, so much has already been said, he then steps back and says, whoa, wait a minute, let me talk about the significance. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Then he gives us this amazing display about how the creative energy and power of God has appeared in a baby in Bethlehem. So clearly, the church had quite a lot of material to go on, but most of it was actually based in the Gospel of Luke. And so it was mostly focused on Luke. And so that decides its trajectory from then on. And then the Franciscans, who were great publicizers and popularizers and speaking to the people, great preachers in the 13th century, really honed in on this and took these themes and ideas from Luke, and they gave us the nativity as we see today. The stable, ox and ass at Bethlehem. The manger, well, that's in Luke. They give us the angels over there as well, although Luke doesn't say there were actually angels at the bedside. He only talks about on the hills outside. So in many ways, we've got St. Francis of Assisi to thank for giving us this very clear image of the nativity. And it really took on, it spread across medieval Europe, and it really caught people's imagination.
Now, Martin, you'll be leading a Christmas... Oh, sorry, Neil. I just would like to know, Martin, if you can give us a little sneak peek of what you'll be saying. You're leading a service tomorrow in a church in Somerset, I believe.
Yeah, actually in Wiltshire. It's actually in Trowbridge, but we're very, very close to Somerset here. We're sort of borderline people here. The border's just over there. And I'm going to be talking about that passage from John, when John says the amazing creative power of God, the majesty of God, the Word, the Logos, through whom God created the world, became a little baby, became a real human being, came to his own and was rejected. And then he ends it by saying, but we've seen what he's like, full of grace and truth. And my message to people in an austerity winter, in a difficult winter, in a time of anxiety and tribulation is, you know what? God knows all about this, because this Jesus is someone who had to flee as a refugee to Egypt. This Jesus is somebody who comes into poverty. This Jesus is somebody whose dad's just a local builder. Carpenter, builder, could be either, actually, the Greek word. In other words, if you think you're an ordinary person and God ain't got a clue what you're like, think again, because the Christmas story says God knows what it's like to be a person. And you know what's even better? He loves you.
Fantastic stuff, Martin. Can I ask you as well about a particular favourite of mine? We love Christmas trees here in my house. We've got a couple of real trees, and we've got all sorts of artificial trees as well. Every corner we've got them. There's more there than meets the eye, is there not? It's not just a latter day addition. It does go quite deep.
Yes, it goes very deep. It's quite clear that a tradition of celebrating with greenery in the dead of winter goes right back to pagan times. We're talking about pre-Christian times. St. Boniface, for example, cuts down an oak, for example, cuts on a sacred tree and gets into big trouble for it as well. We know, for example, that greenery is brought into all sorts of different situations to celebrate life in the middle of winter. So it's quite clear that this use of a tree of greenery to symbolise life at a time of death, apparent death, the middle of winter, is quite a big deal. And we've got lots of church wardens accounts, for example, from the Middle Ages, of them bringing in holly, them bringing in mistletoe, bringing in all sorts of stuff, yew berries. But the key thing is, none of them think they're doing anything weirdly esoteric. None of them are doing a bit of undercover paganism. It's simply that what spoke powerfully to people before Christianity also speaks powerfully to people within Christianity as well, that this is a symbol of life at a time of death and darkness. And I reckon a symbol only means what you purpose it with and what you invest it with. So occasionally you meet Christians that get uptight about Christmas trees. And I say, yeah, quite. If you're about to sacrifice your neighbour under it, then yes, you've got a problem there, mate. But actually, if for you it's simply a sign of light and life in a time of darkness, hey, loosen up, guys. It's simply a good visual image. Long history, though. Long history.
I I loved what you were touching on at the beginning as well. I've always been fascinated by the way in which the early Christian church, well, as it was proselytizing, it took on board other useful ideas like Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, that was the Roman ceremony, that was on 25th of December was the feast day for that. And Mithra, who's the god of light and loyalty that the soldiers liked. And all that you're talking about as well, drawing in on the evergreen trees and greenery and light in the darkness. And it does give you that real sense that where people talk about, Christmas is just about shopping, it's just a secular, worship of consumerism. When you actually pay attention to the traditions all around us, the deep roots of them, I think, are very reassuring in adding meaning to it all.
It's rooted in a deep need in the human psyche to find hope in the middle of bleakness, to find purpose when facing apparent death, apparent loss of life, apparent darkness. And I think it's rooted in that deep need of human beings. And I think the church was very skillful. Some people say, it's a bit cynical, but I don't see it that way. I think they were skillful at saying, look, let's take that symbol, let's use it, let's reuse it, let's invest it with a different meaning. Basically say to people, when you put that up, you used to think this, but from now on, put it up and think that. And as long as people are thinking something different, it only means what you invest it with.
Yeah, I don't you think, because you mentioned John, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word, which is Jesus, was with God. The idea that it was all there all the time, and that people were the Christmasness and the Christianity was there even before Christ. And what happens, what the story seems to tell us, is that by the time Christ is actually here 2,000 years ago, the traditions, the earlier traditions, get swept up into what that Christmas story is all about.
Yes, it's an extraordinary, outrageous and controversial belief, really. I mean, there's a hymn title that says, "Our God contracted to a span, incomprehensibly made man," and that is quite an extraordinary idea, really. Whether people believe it or they don't believe it, it is quite an extraordinary belief. Obviously, it's core to me and my belief, but this concept that God would do that because he so loved the world, as John also wrote, John so loved the world, he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him would not perish but would have everlasting life. This idea for me that God went through all of that because he loves everybody, regardless of age and gender and colour, this is the most radical message in the universe as far as I'm concerned. But I'm very, very biased.
Thank you very much, Martin, for your enthusiasm this evening on Christmas Eve, and thank you for joining us on this special day to run us through the entire history of Christmas. That was brilliant. Martin is, of course, a historian and a licensed lay minister who will be leading the Christmas Day service at a church in Somerset tomorrow. So, after the break, I'm very sorry we haven't got to Keith on this side of the break. We'll be coming to him straight away after the break, and we're also hoping to speak to an etiquette expert who can tell us what we should and shouldn't do on Christmas Day. See you in 3 minutes.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. Clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Now, I'm sure you will be wondering, thinking about throughout this time, where on earth Father Christmas is. Let's see how he's getting on as he travels around the world. There he is on our screen. He's over a large landmass. Keith, take it away. Where is he?
Well, according to Google, he's just arriving in Jimma in Ethiopia.
He's in Ethiopia?
Well, according to Google, yeah.
Well, he gets around pretty quickly. I guess he hasn't got too much time. When's he in London? When's he in the UK?
About 6 hours, they're reckoning.
Only 6 hours' time, so that would take us to, quick maths.
That would be 1 o'clock in the morning.
1 o'clock in the morning he's going to arrive in the UK.
Probably sooner than that.
So you probably should get your children to bed if they're still up, or your grandchildren. They need to get to bed soon. Make sure that they're asleep in time for Santa to come. Anyway, let's get more now ahead of midnight mass, which of course is a big part of the festive calendar for Christians. Thousands of people will gather at churches. Perhaps you're going, let me know. Across Britain this evening, let's cross to our Yorkshire reporter, Anna Riley.
Reverend Dan Thomas, we're here Christmas Eve, Selby Abbey, and you've got a Christmas message for us. But we also heard in November with census results that came out that less than half the population of England and Wales now say that they're Christian. What do you make of those findings?
I think a lot of us in the church possibly weren't actually that surprised by them. I think it's a challenge to us in terms of how we think about our practice, how we reach out to people. From my point of view, everybody is on a spiritual journey. We might use different language to communicate that, but I think for us as a church, it's a case of, well, how do we walk alongside people, meet them exactly where they are, rather than assuming they know who we are and what we're about.
And why would you say Christianity is still relevant in this day and age?
I think Christianity calls us to relate better to each other, to connect better to who we are as individuals, to connect to nature, to connect to the divine, to connect with God. And I think those four connections are important timelessly, really.
And have you seen that people's faith have helped them through difficult times? You know, we've had coronavirus pandemic, now we're going through a cost of living crisis.
Yeah, personally, it's definitely been an impact for me. My faith has kept me going through a number of difficult times. I would hope that that's something that our congregation would echo as well. But it's really important for me to just, as I say, connect with people's stories where they are. I find it so encouraging when people tell me about their faith and how their faith has helped them.
And it's Christmas Eve. You've got a number of services coming up, including midnight mass this evening. What is the Christmas message?
The Christmas message is that sign that God delights in being with us, that God wants to be with us, that God came as a little baby boy to an economically deprived family who were struggling, and that's where God chooses to be. And that in that little baby, God provides a way for all of us to be in relationship.
Thank you, Reverend Dan Thomas there with the Christmas message. So a Merry Christmas here from Selby Abbey.
Thank you very much. That was our Yorkshire reporter, Anna Riley there. Now, every family has its own Christmas Day traditions. For instance, some people exchange presents first thing in the morning. Others do it after the big dinner. As a child, I'm not sure I could have waited that long. It was first thing in the morning, probably about 6 a.m. But there are some definite do's and don'ts that all of us should know about to make sure we don't embarrass ourselves tomorrow. Laura, I am joined now by etiquette expert Laura Windsor. Laura, are you there? Laura.
Yes, I am.
Happy Christmas Eve to you. I imagine probably one of the worst things to do is to get sloppily drunk.
Overindulging, absolutely. Historically, any behaviour that showed greed or attention to food was inappropriate. And one of those is overindulgence. Also, smacking of lips, burping and other weird noises one makes, slurping and gulping and blowing on food. But however, in some cultures, burping is a sign of appreciation.
Indeed.
For example, in some Asian countries, if you don't burp after a dinner, it shows that you didn't really enjoy it. So politeness is subjective, depending on where you are.
I was about to say my dad's in trouble, but perhaps he's just showing some Asian etiquette, perhaps when it comes to smacking the teeth and burping. I'm just joking if my dad is indeed watching.
Oh.
Now, one of the questions that you raised with one of our producers, I think, was whether unbuttoning your trousers is good etiquette or not. Surely it's better to unbutton them than to, I don't know, suffer from bloating, which could lead to adverse consequences.
However, in today's fashion, we have those trousers that are elasticated, that sort of grow with you as the stomach grows rather than restricting you. So there are ways around it. But yes, overindulgence, undoing your buttons isn't the most elegant thing. But if you can hide it with a shirt or some cheesy jumper, then why not?
Laura, hi. Good to see you again, Laura.
Yes.
What's your take on? Well, I'm going to use the word gaudy, but I don't want it to be taken in the pejorative sense necessarily. Lights and Santa and his reindeers on the roof, and it's blow up snowmen on the doorstep. I say the more the merrier myself. What is your take on decorations that might appall the neighbours?
Well, Christmas is only once a year, so, why not? Why not take advantage of it? It may annoy the neighbours, but how many times do you annoy the neighbours without even realising? So it's about body language. If you see your neighbours, just smile, say hello, don't show that you're a bit annoyed with their Christmas furniture outside on the lawn.
And connected to that in a way, I used to be very dismissive of Christmas jumpers, snowmen and reindeers and whatever. But now I actually have come to the conclusion in my advancing years that there's something humble about not taking yourself too seriously for at least one day of the year. What do you think about the kind of outrageous garb that people like to don for the couple of days before and after and during Christmas?
Well, I think it depends how formal or informal the do is. If you know the people that are going there and they're already used to the way you behave and the things that you wear, then why not? However, if it's a formal affair, you might be embarrassing someone or making someone feel uncomfortable. So you really need to sort of weigh out. And when you fumble through your drawer, less is always more. And you can always show your wonderful personality in different ways.
Now, hold that thought, Laura. I'm just going to bring in Keith, who's here with me in the studio. Keith, is there anything you would like to ask Laura, our etiquette expert? Are you worried about how to behave at Christmas? Any bad memories of Christmases gone wrong?
Yes, I think, Laura, how do you pass around the Brussels sprouts? That's what I'd like to know. Is there an etiquette around passing around the Brussels sprouts?
Well, in Britain, I don't know why you're asking me this. Is it because you don't like Brussels sprouts, or is it actually the
No, I do. They don't like me, but I like them, yeah.
Well, that's all right. Well, you should, in Britain, you pass it clockwise. to the left. Whereas in the rest of the world, of course, we're always different. In the rest of the world, you pass it counterclockwise. Yes.
Well,
Not
that's
many
just a
people know that.
basic question, Keith, really. You know, you should have known that. Well, presumably you pass them to who you don't like.
But possibly with the Brussels sprouts. Possibly, but...
I've got another question for Laura.
Yes.
Christmas crackers and paper hats, yes or no?
Oh, absolutely. I wear actually antler headbands. I shouldn't really say it on TV, but I have been guilty of wearing weird things. And of course, if everybody around the table is wearing a hat or an antler headband, it would be rude not to wear it yourself, because it would show a sign of you're too superior and yes, not a good sign.
Here, here.
You really need to go with the flow. Politeness is about making others feel comfortable.
And Laura, very quickly, now a lot of families are struggling this Christmas, and it often falls on one member of the family or one half of the family, one side, one child, one grandparent, whatever, to sort of host absolutely everyone. Now, what's the etiquette? Can you ask for a bit of cash up front, or should you just say, oh, please can you bring a bottle of wine or contribute to, you know, the meal in one way or another?
Yes.
Good question.
Well, I think it's the little things in life. So any kind of appreciation, but of course, why not everyone bring a course? Then everyone chips in. There's no money involved, so there's no embarrassment. One family, I don't know, the sisters bring in one course and grandma brings in the cake at the end, and everyone chips in. I think that's a real good compromise.
I think so. And just very quickly before you have to go, what should one wear on Christmas Day? A lot of people are tempted to stay in their pyjamas, just roll out of bed and stay in their Christmas PJs all day long. Should one get their heels and their glad rags on?
Depends what everyone else is wearing. If everyone else is wearing pyjamas, then it's polite to wear pyjamas yourself. If it's a formal do, then why not? I mean, what is so wrong about dressing up? I love dressing up. It kind of is part of the merriment. So it really depends on the situation you're in.
Fantastic. Thank you, Laura, for joining us this Christmas Eve to tell us the do's and don'ts of what to do at Christmas dinner. That was, of course, Laura Windsor, our etiquette expert there. Now, after the break, I will meet Britain's biggest Yorkshire pudding fan, who says he's going to eat 200 of them over Christmas. Slightly odd, but we'll find out why. See you shortly after the break.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236 and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, I don't know about you, but I do absolutely love a Yorkshire pudding. Unfortunately, my mother says they're not a traditional part of a Christmas dinner. I think she does anyway, so I won't be getting to eat any tomorrow, I don't think. Now, one man who hasn't got that problem is Jake Farrar. In fact, he says he's Britain's biggest fan of Yorkshire puddings, and so he's planning to eat 200 of them over the festive period. I'm delighted to say that Jake joins me now, along with his mother-in-law, Tracy Reed. Jake, why on earth do you love Yorkshire puddings so much? I mean, I like them every now and again, but every day.
Why not, though? They're absolutely delicious, and I feel sorry for you not having them on your dinner.
Now, do they belong?
Part of a roast dinner, and Christmas dinner is the best roast of the year.
Now, you know, there is some difference of opinion when it comes to whether a Yorkshire pudding even belongs in a Christmas lunch. What do you think, Tracy?
Oh, yes, certainly. You could have a Yorkshire pudding, especially when you're from Yorkshire.
Now, how did you get famous on TikTok through this? I don't know if we can show one of your videos. We may well have a video clip coming in just shortly. So how did you manage to make it? Ah, here we go. There you are. Oh, my goodness. You've got plates. Just for people who are watching, who are listening on radio, there is Jake with Tracy eating what looks like about 3 dozen Yorkshire puddings. How many views did you get on that?
So there's over 1.1 million views on that.
Oh, my... Oh, my God. So you must have a lot of followers then.
I've got 53,000 followers now.
That's pretty impressive.
A lot of stuff's blown up on there. Everyone's loving the Yorkshire pudding content. That was just my normal dinner, and Tracy said, oh, you can't just be having that. You best film it. Let everyone else see what you're doing.
Yeah, the trending sound. If we put it with a trending sound, it goes further. Fingers crossed.
Now, have any Yorkshire pudding companies asked for you to be an influencer, be an ambassador?
Honestly, we're trying. I've name-dropped quite a few, and I'm not name-dropping another one until they sponsor me.
Yeah. We've got our brand.
Well, I think it's only a matter of time. I mean, you are very much committed. Now, I've heard that you eat Yorkshire puddings, well, you have many recipes, and you eat them with some rather strange toppings.
I wouldn't call them strange. Different. I wouldn't call them strange.
Go on, tell me.
You can do absolutely anything with a Yorkshire pudding. So you can do anything from like a savoury to a sweet. Because Yorkshire pudding is essentially pancake mix. So if you were to put it with jam, clotted cream, anything like that, it goes. It just goes with anything.
Just good. Well, I've only ever tried a savoury Yorkshire pudding, but my boyfriend actually, when we were in Scotland, had a roast, 3 different types of roast beef, just in one Yorkshire pudding, and it was called the Mighty Yorkshire lunch or the Mighty Yorkshire dinner. Anyway, it went down a treat with him, so, you know, perhaps you're onto something. Now, are you telling the truth? Is it only Yorkshire puddings that you do eat, or do you like other foods?
I never said it was only Yorkshire puddings. I eat a lot of them, though. I do.
How many are you having tomorrow, then, Jake?
Sorry, I've got a very excited 2-year-old.
Yes, I just heard. How many Yorkshire puddings are you having tomorrow, then, Jake?
So I'm not the one making the dinner, but I'm going to have plenty put on my plate tomorrow.
Oh my God, you've got them there. Now, for people listening at home, he has just raised a plate with a rather large Yorkshire pudding filled with many more Yorkshire puddings, little mini Yorkshire puddings.
Hi, Jake and Tracy. Hi. I'm fascinated to see you there. Are you a competitive eater of anything else? Are you moving into the terrain of? Are you going to practice consuming vast quantities of any other commodity?
I'm not, but funny you should mention competitive eating. I was asked to be a guest at the Yorkshire Pudding Festival this year, but sadly the festival never happened, but I was asked to be a guest.
And
sorry.
it's that I've also been reading around the subject of competitive Yorkshire pudding eating, and I couldn't quite get to the bottom of what the world record is. Is there a number or a target that you would go for that would put you actually at the top of the Yorkshire pudding eating tree?
I'll be honest, I've been looking at that, and the number I've found, it's around 300. I've been looking at it, it's in one sitting, and it's 300. But it's how they define the Yorkshire puddings, like, is it a certain brand, a certain size? Like, are they just buying the smallest of the smallest? That's what I've been trying to find out, because it's something that I want to do.
Yeah, you've had a competition though, haven't you, with a friend?
Oh yeah, I've had a
You've
competition.
had a competition, how many can you eat in how many minutes?
It was how many can you eat in 60 seconds?
Yeah.
And I also, there's another question I feel I need to ask. Tracy, is this all your fault? Are you the maker of the Yorkshire puddings, or is it Jake? Do you make your own?
I make my own, but it's all Tracy's fault that it's gone viral.
I encouraged him.
Yeah.
As you can see, the big lad, he ate the big dinner, and he picked his dinner, he chose his dinner, and he was going to have a go. And I just thought, why don't you put it on TikTok with a trending sound, and see what happens to the video? Because you're going to get comments that people don't like Yorkshire puddings, that people are going to say there's too many, people are going to agree with him. Wow, wish I could eat that.
Well, you know what? I quite like watching those 10,000 calories a day challenges. So perhaps you could do that only with Yorkshire puddings, although I don't know how many Yorkshire puddings that would be. That would probably be
a heck of a lot.
massive.
Yorkshire pudding, an average Yorkshire pudding is about 60 to 80 calories, so that would be a heck of a lot.
So you'd have to make or buy a hell of a lot of Yorkshire puddings. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. That, of course, was Jake Farrer alongside his mother-in-law, Tracy Reed. And Jake has a penchant for Yorkshire puddings there. Let me know if you think Yorkshire puddings belong on a Christmas dinner or whether you take part in competitive eating. I mean, it's quite, it looks fun if you have a big appetite, doesn't it? Have you ever done one of these food challenges, Keith?
No, but I had 2 lunches the other day. I had to have lunch with a friend, and I didn't want to upset another friend who had already arranged lunch with, so I had one lunch at 12 o'clock and one lunch. 2
lunches in one day?
Yeah,
and did you have dinner as well?
No, I didn't. No,
oh, well, that doesn't count then. That's just, you know what? I think lunch is the best meal of the day.
Absolutely.
It divides it up quite nicely. It gives you something to look forward to when you're at work or when you're at home in the morning. Yes, all 4 lunches and long lunches. And 2 lunches.
Yeah.
I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, one might say it's slightly indulgent. How many calories do you think the average person tends to eat on Christmas Day? That's usually, the Daily Mail usually writes up an example of the average person and what they consume compared to what public health officials say we should. And the comparison is stark, Keith, would you believe?
Well, I would imagine. I mean, I think you're supposed to eat between 2 and 2,500 if you're a bloke, and I should think it's probably around about 4,000, something like that.
I think it's more like 10, actually.
Is it really?
Yeah, with all the booze as well. But after the break, we'll look back on the good old days of Christmas TV. I'm going to need your help with this one, Keith. And I've been looking forward to this all show. We might be celebrating Christmas with a little drink. Oh, we've already had our little drink. We'll be doing another toast to you later for the Christmas Eve. See you shortly.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Welcome back. So we're going to catch up with the progress of Father Christmas as he visits all the good boys and girls around the world, not the bad boys and certainly not the bad girls. So on our screen right now, we've got Santa again with his lovely reindeer. Now tell me, Keith, take it away. Where is he?
Well, according to my tracker, he's 2 minutes away from Moscow.
Well, that looks like it could be near Moscow. So it's going to be terribly cold for Santa and his reindeer. I do wonder how he keeps them warm.
Well, I understand, a bit like they do in Vienna, he puts earmuffs on them.
He puts earmuffs on them. And Rudolph, of course, is not there. We all know what happened to Rudolph. He is not invited on this journey.
Well, if it's foggy, he's quite handy with his old red nose, you know.
Well, it's just a nice snow. Anyway, we're going to move on from the Santa tracker, although I'm sure we'll be keeping an eye on that throughout the evening on GB News. Now, if you have ever thought Christmas wasn't all you thought it would be, spare a thought for those that may not see another one. In Northern Ireland, the Children to Lapland Trust took a plane load of children with terminal and life-threatening conditions to see Father Christmas. Our reporter Dougie Beattie went along with them.
Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride on a one-horse open sleigh.
Christmas gifts can come in many forms. And for families that have had a child with terminal or life-threatening illnesses, a getaway to a land of innocence, snow and make-believe may just be the ticket.
It means everything really, to be honest. We've never been in a family trip like this before, so it's going to be magical.
Yeah, this is the first time. This is Evie's first time away too. It's your first holiday? Yeah.
Ella was diagnosed with a brain tumour. So we had went through a whole year of chemo, radiation and everything, and we've come to the end of it, and the nurses said to us that they would nominate her, and that's how we got here.
The wait is finally over. This privately chartered jet behind me will fly these children to Lapland for the magic of Christmas and to meet Santa.
I'm going to see Santa.
Ah, and what are you going to ask him for?
A present. I'm going to ask him for like a gaming monitor and LED lights and all for my bedroom.
With such a journey, medical experience must be on hand. And Dr. Mark Rowlands is the medical director and explains the seriousness of the situation.
These children are sick. I mean, they are life limited and terminal. Some of these kids might never see Santa Claus again, so this is a big, big trip. But you name it, they've had everything: liver transplants, heart transplants, bone marrow transplants. Still a lot of them under a lot of care and treatment at the moment. They're all stabilised. We've all had the go ahead from their individual consultants that they're fit to go, and we want to make sure that they have a great day.
Even the flight crew have a soft spot for this trip, and Captain John Rowland is no different.
Oh, it's wonderful to see all the kids going away to see Father Christmas. They're really excited, so I love doing these flights.
The landscape and climate here are very different, and that gives the families an opportunity to sample some new experiences. The highlight of the day is the one-to-one with Santa, and his advice for children was very clear.
How long should it be before they go to sleep on Christmas Eve?
On Christmas Eve, it could be very good if they can go and sleep about at least at 9 o'clock in the evening, yeah. And then if they have a fireplace, so that they should check up that they have no fire in the fireplace on Christmas Eve.
The whole experience may be a lot to put into one day, but the children on this plane need specific medical support, and time is of the essence. But for most, it's a day that dreams will be realised and memories made. Dougie Beattie, GB News.
Thank you very much to our reporter Dougie Beattie there with that package from Lapland. Now, we've talked about a lot of Christmas traditions during the show, but one big change in recent years is the decline in the popularity of Christmas TV specials. Back in the day, more than 20 million people would tune in to see the likes of Morecambe and Wise, Only Fools and Horses, and even EastEnders, but not anymore. We're going to go live to Sarah Robertson, I believe, who is from the Sunday Mirror. Are you there, Sarah? Is she there? I'm not sure. We're going to be talking... Ah, there she is. Lovely. Sarah, this is going to have to be very quick because we have to go to the break very quickly. But how has our TV watching patterns changed over the years?
They've changed completely from what we remember in the 80s and the 90s, when all of the family on Christmas Day would gather around and watch, the 4 terrestrial channels. Everyone would be glued. EastEnders, when it was getting figures of 30.1 million, when Dirty Dan served Angie the divorce papers. There has never yet been a soap or any show has ever beaten that viewing figure that was received for that time back in the 80s. It was the same when Hilda Hogden left Coronation Street in 1987. That was over 20 million. So we've never seen those figures. The only show in recent years that's come close has been Gavin and Stacey when they did the special in 2019. That got over 17 million, which was a huge hit for the BBC. But we haven't seen anything since. Even Call the Midwife last year, their figures dramatically halved from 2020. And it was the Queen's speech which has led the viewing figures, the ratings for the last 2 years on terrestrial television. So safe to say, how we view TV now and those shows, it's just changed completely. The landscape.
Now, Sarah, just very quickly, because we're going to have to finish the show so shortly. What should people be watching tomorrow if they're foolish enough to switch over from GB News?
The King's speech. It's King Charles, his first speech to the nation.
Of course.
It's going to be fantastic. The King's speech. Always. You have that's your mark of Christmas Day. You can't miss it.
Well, there you go, the King's speech. I'm sure everyone will tune in at 3 p.m. Thank you very much, Sarah, for giving us a very quick interview there. Sadly, that's all from Neil and I this evening. Thank you to Keith Prince and to all of my guests. Keith here in the studio. Neil and I will be back at 6 o'clock next Saturday, which is, of course, New Year's Eve. Neil, say goodbye. Next on GB News, there's a special programme. Cameron Walker looks back on a royal year. I hope you have a truly wonderful Christmas this year. Good night.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking windy and mild for most, with a mixture of sunny spells and showers. Let's take a look at the details. Showers will affect northern Scotland to start Christmas Day, though, with some sunny spells as well, especially in the east. A windy morning, particularly for coastal regions, though mild for most. Showers for many in the west, but a dry start for eastern parts of Northern Ireland, though showers will soon feed in on the southwesterly winds. A mixture of sunshine and showers to start Christmas Day for Northern England, with the heaviest and most frequent showers across the western areas. There will be some dry weather across Wales to begin tomorrow morning. However, there will be some showers too, especially for northern and western parts. A breezy morning, though, mild for all. A dry start for much of the East Midlands on Christmas Day, with some sunny spells too. There will be some showers spreading into the west of the region later in the morning. For East Anglia, although it will be a mostly cloudy start tomorrow, it will be dry for many, though there is a chance of some rain in the far south. Across southern England, it will be dry for many at first, though showers will move in from the west, with a chance of some more prolonged rain in the east. Showers will continue to feed in from the west, remaining generally drier in the east, becoming colder in the far northwest. And that is how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online. Across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the people.